Hi, y'all. I just wanted to record myself reading The Seaman, The Dog Who Explored the West with Lewis and Clark to you. I feel like this might be an easier way to make sure that we're on the same page. And when you come across words, we can talk about what those words mean. In Epic, it's really great when you read along, you can click on a word that you don't know and it tells you the definition. So let's get started. Seaman, The Dog Who Explored the West with Lewis and Clark. Chapter 1. A Duck, a Dog, and a Deal. This took place in Pittsburgh of August 1803. The huge black dog trotted cheerfully beside his owner, his long fur ruffled in the summer breeze blowing off the river. He held his head high to sniff the air. A hunter was standing on the river bank ahead, just at a point where the two rivers flowed together to form the Ohio River. The hunter's smell was unfamiliar. Starched cotton shirt, new leather boots. The dog watched the stranger closely. As soon as his owner stopped walking, the dog sat down. Good job, his owner said, smiling. When I stop walking, you sit. He stroked the dog's fur. Nobody has to teach you manners, do they? They come natural to you. The dog studied his owner's face, waiting for a command, but his owner was looking at the hunter on the river bank. The dog followed his owner's gaze. The hunter raised his long rifle and aimed at a flock of ducks on the water. Crack! The hunter fired, and the ducks squawked and flew in a panic downriver. One duck floated limp on the water. The dog's owner chuckled. Let's have a little fun with that city fellow, he said as he slipped the rope off the dog's collar. Get it, he said. Instantly, the dog bounded toward the water. He leaped into the river and swam to the limp duck, picking up the duck in his mouth. The dog wheeled around and swam back toward the shore. Grinning, his owner admired the dog's performance. The dog spread four paws, stroked through the water like paddles. This dog was a natural swimmer. He moved with grace of a fine creature. When the dog climbed onto the riverbank, he shook off and trotted back, duck in mouth. Sitting in front of his owner, he waited for him to take the duck. The hunter watched, astonished. He strode over to the dog's owner, his cheeks red with anger. What's the meaning of this, sir? He demanded. Why do you send your dog to snatch the duck I just shot? The dog's owner put his hands on his lips and laughed, of course. He never intended to keep the duck. He was just having himself a little joke, that's all. But the hunter looked plenty angry. It was a good thing his fancy rifle could only shoot one slug at a time before it had to be reloaded. Thought we'd save you a dunk in the river to get your bird, he chuckled. He looked at his dog and said, Give the man his duck. The dog hesitated. That's right, the man said, pointing to the hunter. Give to him. Obediently, the dog walked over and sat in front of the hunter and waited for the duck to be taken from his mouth. The hunter hesitated, suspicious. The dog's huge mound of head was as high as the man's hip. Those powerful jaws could deliver a nasty bite. My name is Hanson, James Hanson, said the dog's owner, holding out his hand to introduce himself. Ain't you the fellow who'd come from Philadelphia to pick up a keelboat? The hunter's face relaxed and he shook Hanson's hand. I'm Meriwether Lewis, and yes, I've come to pick up the keelboat. I ordered from the shipyard here in Pittsburgh. Lewis shook his head and grinned. I have to admit, you had me going there for a minute, Mr. Hanson. Lewis reached for the duck, and the dog gently released it. Turning it over, Lewis examined its feathers. Seems your dog has a very soft mouth, except for the spot where my slug entered the duck isn't damaged at all. I commend you for your skill as a trainer, Mr. Hanson. Hanson chuckled. He has a soft mouth, that's for sure. He patted the dog. But I can't take much credit for his training. He watched his mama work, and that's how he learned. He took to the water right away when he was a little fuzzy little pup, and he started retrieving by himself. Of course, I did train his mama. Always she said she was the finest working dog on the Ohio River. Lewis held out his hand to let the dog smell him. The dog sniffed the hunter's fingers and recognized a familiar sense of gunpowder in river water. Lewis gently stroked the dog's head. The fur was dense and soft as velvet. He's a handsome animal, Mr. Hanson. Is he a Newfoundland? He is a Newfoundland, all right. Best dog a man can have on the water, Hanson declared proudly. Brushing his sandy hair from his eyes, Lewis studied the dog, standing stiffly with his legs ever so slightly bowed. Lewis held his chin in his hands. The way he stood so straight reminded Hansen of a soldier. Finally, Lewis spoke. "Is this a young dog, Mr. Hansen?" "Well, he's about a year old," Hansen answered, "but if you're asking if this dog's for sale, I'm afraid I can't oblige to you. He's been promised to a fellow who's having a ship built here in Pittsburgh. A sea-going ship." Hansen smiled. "I figure a dog like that is good on the river and deserves a chance to work a sea-going ship." The dog looked back and forth at the men's faces and talked. As they talked, he panted quietly, the tip of his pink tongue sticking out. "I'd be glad to do business with you, though," Hansen said in a friendly voice. "I've bred this dog's mama the same, sire. Every one of his pups is a fine, healthy animal, full-blooded Newfoundlands. They are. The litter will be ready come fall. I'd be pleased to save one of the pups for you." Suddenly, Lewis spoke with a rush of words. "Mr. Hansen, would you be persuaded to part with this dog if I told you that I was also about to travel the sea?" Hansen looked skeptical. "Didn't you say that you came from Pittsburgh to pick up a keelboat?" Lewis nodded. "A keelboat ain't no sea-going vessel," Hansen said. "It's made for river travel, for taking supplies up a river." "Well, what if I told you that I plan to take my keelboat upriver to the sea?" "Mr. Lewis, I wasn't born yesterday," Hansen explained. "Ain't no way to get to the sea from Pittsburgh by going upriver. To get to the sea, you got to go down the Ohio to its mouth, and then you got to go down the Mississippi River into the Atlantic Ocean." Lewis paused. "The Atlantic is not the only sea." Hansen wrinkled his brow and squinted at Lewis. "I intended to take my keelboat down the Ohio to its mouth, then up to the Mississippi, then to the Missouri River," Lewis explained. "Then I'll go up the Missouri River to its source in the Rocky Mountains, where I'll look at the Northwest Passage to the Pacific Ocean." "I ain't never heard of anyone making such a trip," Hansen scoffed, and started to run away, but something about Lewis's face held him there. Something made Hansen think he was hearing the truth. "Mr. Hansen, nobody has ever made such a trip before," Lewis said earnestly. "I've been chosen by President Thomas Jefferson to lead the expedition to the Western Sea." Hansen raised his eyebrows and stared at the young man. "I wanted to take this dog with me," Lewis continued. "I need a working dog, a dog that can retrieve game, an intelligent dog that learns quickly and can take comrades, a dog that stays calm around strangers, but alert to danger. Your dog is just what I've been looking for, but I can't wait for the litter of pups because I'll be leaving soon as my keelboat is ready." Lewis paused to get his breath. "What do you say, Mr. Hansen?" Lewis continued. "I'm willing to pay your price." Hansen hesitated. What if this fellow Lewis was true? If he really was taking orders from President Jefferson, then he might be willing to pay a handsome sum for the well-trained dog. "I'll take $20 for him," Hansen announced, "and not a penny less. As it is, the fellow that I promised him will be madder than a hornet. Don't even bother to tell me what you want to bargain, Mr. Lewis. The deal is $20 or no sale." $20 then, Lewis said without blinking an eye. He reached for his purse. Hansen stood open-mouthed. $20 was more than a man could earn in a month of working on a farm near Pittsburgh, picking crops and mending fences from sunup to sundown, 6 days a week. Why, with $20, Hansen could outfit himself and his 5 sons from head to foot, without his misuse so much as picking up a sewing needle. Hansen grinned as his good fortune. It certainly wasn't every day that someone agreed to pay $20 for a dog, and in cash, right on the spot. Lewis handed Hansen the money, and Hansen counted it. Then Hansen handed Lewis the dog's rope. The dog watched as the men exchanged the money. While Hansen handed Lewis the rope, the dog whined softly. Lewis sat down next to the Newfoundland. The man's sandy-colored hair fell onto his forehead, and in his fair cheeks rounded into a boyish smile. The dog wagged his tail. Lewis stroked his thick, soft fur on the dog's chest and licked Lewis's face. "You say you're going to take this dog to the Pacific Ocean on orders from President Jefferson?" Hansen repeated. That's right, Mr. Hansen. As soon as my keelboat is ready, I'll be leaving, Lewis said. Hansen shook his head at the wonder of it. What tale this would make, he thought to himself, selling a dog for $20 whole to a fellow who's going to take all the way to the Pacific Ocean, on the orders, nonetheless, of the president himself? Hansen leaned down to stroke the dog. The dog sprang to his feet. That's all right, Hansen said quietly. You have a new owner now. Sit. The dog sat and the eyes were glued on Hansen's face. Lewis fastened the rope on the dog's collar. He put an arm around the dog's shoulders and smoothed the soft fur around the dog's ears. It's okay, boy, he said in a comforting voice. You're my dog now. I'm going to take you with me to explore the West. You might get to swim every day and retrieve game and hunt whenever you want. The dog licked Lewis, and Hansen's cheek turned to leave. One more thing, sir, Lewis called out after him. What name does this dog answer to? Seaman, Hansen replied slowly. Then he shrugged, a grin spreading across his face. I named him Seaman because I knew he'd be going to sea.